Hello everybody, my name is Josh and I will be reviewing books. I've been reading a lot of books lately, I've been buying a lot of books, and this is my way of justifying it. So, because I'm reading these books, you all get these reviews out of me. I would like to say though that I'm kind of an ogre, so if you're expecting some very nuanced takes on the tertiary meanings of scenes or the amazing underlying themes that the author's trying to convey about the human condition, you're going to miss every bit of that with me, right? I very much so can only pull the most, minute, easy to understand themes out of a book. I read exclusively because I enjoy them and the stories are cool, and we'll be doing it like that, right? So we're starting off with Dungeon Crawler Carl. It's book one of a multiple book series that I probably should have had that number beforehand, but I don't. It is by Matt Dinniman. I hope I'm saying that right. I did not look that up either. And we're currently on the first 20% through. All right, so how these incremental reviews will go is that I'm going to break it up in about 1/5 every part of the book. So about 20% of the book, I'll do a review, 20% I'll do a review, 20% do a review, 20% do a review. So we get to the end, and then I'll give my final impressions on the book. I'll be doing a spoiler-free and a spoiler version. This one will be the spoiler-free version, so I hopefully will not be giving away too much in this review. And honestly, I'm pretty excited about this book. So just give you a quick little overview of it. We have our main character, the dungeon crawler himself, Carl. More or less within the first chapter, you find out that an alien force has destroyed most of the planet, killed most of the people on the planet, and all the remaining people are given the option to either survive on the planet with no resources or enter into a dungeon. This dungeon is very video game-esque. He immediately gets prompts and, notifications as if his brain is turning into the HUD of a video game and he's able to see health bars, all these things. So it really gives you this video game feeling to the world, right? Anybody who's ever played something like a Skyrim knows how this setup's going to be. So you enter into the dungeon, and then more or less you have 18 floors to get through. These 18 floors have varying levels of difficulty, each one increasing, and as it increases, the ability to get to the next level becomes more difficult as well. Further into it, if you survive, then you get to choose things to either exit the dungeon itself or give yourself upgrades, which is kind of cool. And they kind of frame it as like this, kind of like trash TV for the rest of the universe almost. I mean, it's the fate of the world as we know it, our world, right? Carl's just another guy in our world, but in this story, he's basically just a player in a video game that people across the cosmos can tune into and watch, which I think is a really cool way to build a story. I'm super excited about it, and I'm just going to give you some of my first impressions on this first 20%. Now, if we're getting into the initial vibe of the book, I think that this is a very funny, kind of dark style humor, adventurous book that we're getting into. The vibes are good. It's definitely something that's keeping me interested. I think the start of it was a good way to get you hooked. You dive right into the action. You get very little unimportant world building, which I really enjoy. I like that we just cut to the chase, get me into the dungeon. Let's see what's really happening out here. People that might enjoy this, people that are really into those just, hardcore adventure books, I can't say too much about how the characters will develop based on this because I don't know, I'm just getting into it, but I feel like they're laying pretty solid foundations for what's going on in the world so far. If we're jumping into characters, we only have 3 so far, really, so not a ton being introduced early on, but that's fine. I enjoy that. We have our main character, Dungeon Crawler Carl. He is kind of like the hero of the story. They make him out to be someone that is in good shape, kind of a big person. They kind of describe that he comes from a linebacker lineage, so you kind of get this massive heroic figure in your mind. They do a good job of explaining that he's in shape, he's not super combat trained or anything like that, but he's got a lot of potential. He's got a good base to build your character off of. I'm thinking of him like you're picking a very standard build in Skyrim kind of guy, or he might transform into more of an orc build where it's very much pointing him in the direction of being a warrior type, We also have Princess Donuts, which is his cat that he enters into the dungeon with. Starts off just as a cat, Of course, character development, I don't want to get too much into spoilers of it, but In order for it to be an interesting companion in a story like this, you can't really just have them stay a cat. They kind of gotta give me some back and forth, gotta chop it up with me a little bit, you know what I mean? So they do gain the ability to speak once they're in a dungeon, and introduces it as much as you would imagine a cat being, you know. Very kind of cocky, very, you know, not super kind initially, but definitely some areas of vulnerability where, you know, if you've ever owned a cat, you know, the 1 second they're like angry, running around the house, they bite you, they scratch you, and then another second they're rubbing against you, like purring. They do a good job of conveying that pretty effectively in the first chapters. And then our third character, Mordecai, he's basically just like a giant rat, looks like Master Splinter. He's their tutorial for the dungeon. So what he ends up doing is kind of just like, here's the breakdown of the rules, here's what you can expect for the dungeon. You can tell he's going to be a character that returns later on. And definitely will probably serve as like kind of like a mentorship role in this world, but as it stands, he doesn't have a giant part in the continuation of the story up until this point. You know, it kind of just gets the ground rules down, nice and enjoyable, fills that good character spot that you want. When we start talking about like writing style, readability, I think they do a very good job of keeping you interested in the story. You know, it's first 20% of like a multiple book series, so you gotta lay the groundwork, right? But they don't do it in a way that feels like it's like beating you to death with the details of it. You know what I mean? I think that they do a very good job as well of explaining this like cartoon-like video game style situation that you find yourself in. Like, imagine if you yourself got pulled randomly into a dungeon crawler video game and you to get certain power-ups and stat boosts and all of these things that this intergalactic company has meticulously crafted in order to make a compelling season of television to watch. I love the idea that it is basically just like trash television for the rest of the world. This is this guy's entire life. This is the fate of the world, our world as we know it. And for the universe, it's kind of like a season like Love Island. You know what I mean? Kind of like American Ninja Warrior or something. It's just something you put on in the background and you can kind of get invested in it as you want to, but, you know, more or less just functions as like kind of a source of entertainment for you. I think that's super funny to think about. I love that it's got like these Skyrim RPG style qualities to it, of like I get to choose where I put my points into, and it'll give me real world buffs based on that. And I come into the game with certain buffs based on how I already am. You know, it's a really good way of explaining kind of like the video game leveling system of the universe. I'm enjoying that so far. I think that's super sick. And when it comes to, you know, whether I think this is like a bingeable, slow read book, this is going to be like a bingeable series, I can tell. Like, I'm going to get sucked into this book pretty quick. Not a giant book, 440 pages, so I'll be able to kill it pretty quick, I think. But as it stands, I'm enjoying what I'm reading. And then, like, any predictions I have, you know, it's hard to feel like the stakes in these early on books because, you know, the series is called Dungeon Crawler Carl, right? So he's probably not going to get iced in the first 20% of the first book, just if I had to throw a guess out there. And because of that, it's kind of hard when he gets into these situations to, like, feel any real big stakes, especially because, like, we've already understand that this is kind of like a video game, so, you know, he's got these healing abilities, he's got the ability to recover and all these things, but as it stands, I think they're setting a good baseline for adding stakes later on. You've given us a companion, you know, that he's emotionally attached to. You've given us a mentor figure that has given him more advice than he should have at the moment. So, you know, you're building these emotional stakes. I'm really enjoying that so far. Can't wait to see where it goes from here. All right, coming back to the second part of the review, the spoiler-free version. Kind of at work, just had some dead time. I think I'm on page 2 or 3, so about 46% of the way through the book currently. It's heating up. Action's getting better. Fight scenes are really cool. Really like how they write the fight scenes. I feel like very easy to understand. They describe the villains very well. You know, they do a great job really setting the scene. I'm really enjoying it. They provide enough more dilemma for me to be like engaged with the development of it. And so I'm liking how it's developing. They're about to have their first like really, really big hurdle to get over. The first big bad of the series. So, you know, I think it's built pretty organically up to this. And I'm looking forward to how they attack it. All right, we're back. We'll call it 55% of the book at this point, going on with the spoiler-free portion of it. So they face the first big bad. I think that the battle was very well played. You know, I think they did a really wonderful job of making it seem like insurmountable odds, and then overcoming it in a way that didn't seem forced or unrealistic, which, you know, I really appreciate that in fight scenes. I think it's important that, you know, your hero take losses, which I enjoyed. They're keeping it very interesting. They're adding more stakes as it goes, even if it'll probably end up not paying off super well. It's trying to establish Carl as kind of like just like a good guy, it seems like, which, you know, of course you want to root for the main character. And he also get pulled into, and this probably won't be a spoiler since it is like a game show type thing. They get pulled into basically an interview following, you know, beating the first big bad. And I think that it was just like an interesting part of it, because Princess Donut, being the cat, the beauty show contestant cat, is really comes into herself during the interview. It's a really cool characterization moment for her. And I think that the author just does a really good job of driving the plot forward in ways that keep introducing new ideas, but don't get stagnant, and then kind of keep me interested. So, you know, we'll see what the next part does. I know it's less than 20% for this part, but if I get a chance to read tonight, I want to be able to just keep going. So that's what this one's coming early for. All right, come back with part 4. Looks like I am currently on page 353. So we're right at about 75% way through the book. Spoiler-free portion, I mean, look, this is just classic good rising action, right? I feel like the climax is going to come in. They fought some more bosses. You know, I don't think that any win was undeserved. You know, I feel like that's been pretty consistent by my review so far, is that the power scaling, the power creep makes sense, right? I don't feel like there's any like unnecessary ass pulls. They're doing a great job characterization. You know, they're making me really appreciate the small sacrifices that people make, and then really kind of invest in stories that I wouldn't otherwise care about just because of these small side characters handling this. No, I think this is great. I'm looking forward to how this book ends. I also think they've done a really good job of like establishing a system where it'll be easy for them to continue this for the next few books as well, being like, oh, each floor just gets incrementally harder, you know. So I don't think that there'll ever be a point where I'm like, oh, Carl has obviously like outscaled the rest of the universe. You know, he's never gonna reach a point where he's just blatantly overpowered, I feel like, or where Princess Donut's blatantly overpowered. And yeah, I appreciate that. You know, I'm really enjoying the story so far. I think they're doing a really good job of laying a foundation for a good series while also like keeping me invested. You know, I don't know how strong it would be like it's a standalone book. You know, if you're not looking to get into a series, I get that, but I think it's like the flagship for a series. It's holding up pretty well, in my opinion. All right, so just finished the first book in the series. This is like 5 minutes after me finishing. I think it is like 1 o'clock in the morning where I'm at right now. Banger book, right? I thought it was a killer start off to a series. If you're looking for a book that's like a standalone, you're looking for like a Mistborn type of thing going on, where you can read the first book, kind of get a feel for if you want to do the rest of the series. I don't feel like that's this book particularly. Even, you know, the last 20%, you kind of expect some giant climax, and it just doesn't come. You know, there's no like amazing boss fight to finish it out, nothing like that. It definitely just sets up the rest of the series, which, you know, I appreciate now, because a lot of the books are out. But if this had been just like the first one that dropped, I'd be kind of not too happy with it. I'm going to go ahead and rate it 4 out of 5. I think it is entertaining. It's funny. It has good character moments, good character development. I feel invested in the characters. You know, I feel invested in the plot line. I'm interested in how the dungeon develops. The world building was great. I felt like they trimmed so much of the fat with things that they could have gone into with this world that they didn't. I think overall, I think it's setting up to be a very entertaining series. The writing is very fun. I've heard a lot of people describe it as funny. I think it's just super entertaining, honestly. Even if this isn't your sense of humor, it wasn't like super my sense of humor. They have good bits in it. They use their set pieces well to describe things. Overall, I'm super happy with it. I'm probably gonna lay down and start the next one. Probably give it an hour tonight. But yeah, no, I would recommend this book to friends, especially as like a maybe easy one to get into. It doesn't give you too much to chew on, you know. It doesn't give you too many complex ideas to process. Everything's straightforward. It explains it really well. So if I was trying to get like a beginner into the fantasy genre, this would be a great start for it. So I'm pretty happy with this book.